Hey everyone, welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. I'm chatting gold and, well, more precious metals with Jordan Roy-Byrne, founder and editor of the Daily Gold. Jordan, let's start off from there's the daily moves today that are very interesting. Gold futures, the August contract, made a run right up to about 1796 earlier today, only about 2 hours ago since we are recording this, and now has turned back around. It's still trading at a good level, 1778 on the futures contract. But hey, after yesterday's close, that was a very strong close for gold, and that initial run up to test out pretty much that 1800 level, now this turnaround, are you reading anything into the price action today, Jordan?
Well, the price action today doesn't really change my view that much because in the last day or two, I've been thinking we'd probably see some weakness just because the strength that we've been seeing in the sector, it's been led by gold and it's basically been led by dollar weakness. Gold priced in various foreign currencies, it's not close to making a new high. So the recent strength in gold over the last week or two has been driven mostly by dollar weakness. And I mean, that's okay as long as you get a huge amount of dollar weakness. And I don't know how much more. I mean, the dollar does have support at 95, so it could fall a little bit more. But I mean, I don't think that's enough. Is that enough to push GDXJ, towards a big breakout, which is close? Is that enough to push silver towards a big breakout? I mean, silver, even yesterday, it closed at 1805. That's still a lot of work to do to get above 1850 or 1875. And, we see silver as a bearish candle today. It's kind of a bearish engulfing candle. So the miners are down. So I mean, I'm not saying this is the start of a bigger correction. I'm not bearish because the trend is clearly up. We're in a good position when you back out a little bit, but just in the very short term, the things I've been seeing, they argue that there's more work to be done here before we can be convinced that we're at the start of a big breakout move for the sector.
So, Jordan, in terms of GDX, GDXJ, silver, even SIL, what are you going to be watching most closely when it comes to breakout levels? For GDX, GDXJ, is it simply those levels about a month ago that were reached? So GDXJ, a high of right around 50, GDX, a high of around, let's say, 37.50?
Yeah, I mean, one specific level I would say is GDXJ and 48, which if you look at closing highs where it closed in May, and then at the very end of May, there's resistance there around 48. So GDXJ yesterday, I think it closed around 48. Today, it's down on the 46s again, but after it opened, it tested 48 before selling off. So for GDXJ, 48 is a key level, and GDXJ looks to be, at least in the last couple of days, leading this move. I mean, it's closer to breaking to a new high in closing terms. With respect to SIL, I look at SILJ. I mean, we've talked about it before, Corey, but the SIL, I mean, the silver stocks in the SIL, a lot of them they're gold companies masquerading as silver companies because, as we've talked about before, a lot of these silver companies had to get into gold to survive. I mean, the ones that didn't were dinky juniors that basically did nothing for years and years and, barely survived. So that's why I like following SILJ instead of SIL. And if you look at SILJ, last couple of days, it's tested 1150, hasn't been able to break that. And if you just go back to mid-May, you can see with SILJ, the peak is above 1250, but twice, aside from that, it made peaks around 12. So SILJ is now trading at 1106. So that's not even, that's not even close to breaking out. So silver is definitely, or at least the silver stocks are lagging right now. And silver hasn't been outperforming gold in recent days. So, I mean, I don't want to say I'm reading into it too much, but, looking at these miners, as far as the levels that you asked, I know I got away from that. GDXJ 48 on a closing basis. GDX, I mean, like you said, 37.50. GOEX, I'm looking at on my screen. That's another ETF that actually has explorers, and that rallied up to 31. So, I mean, it's sold off today, but that has resistance at 31. So that's one to keep in mind if it can close above 31. But that's basically how I see it. I mean, not, the minors are lagging, but the juniors are the strongest, and so they've led the strength the last couple days. The large caps have been really weak. I mean, they're not even close to. I mean, the Dow Jones U.S. Gold Mining Index, that's not even close to breaking out. So it just, I mean, it's possible you can have a sector breakout and it's led by a few small areas, but I'm not seeing evidence of a imminent threat of a broad-based breakout right here and now.
So, Jordan, if we take a step back and understand that, yeah, a lot of these explorers, the smaller companies, have actually seen a rotation of money into them, and looking at that GOEX, very interesting to see that it did recently break to levels above that 2016 high. So that is a significant breakout, but isn't it still a stronger market if we do continue to see some of the majors and stronger companies lead rather than the rotation of money into some of the smaller explorers?
Well, it's a good question. I don't think the rotation is that much of a problem as long as you have everything really participating strongly. So if we see GDXJ break out first, and then we see GOEX is breaking out, and then SILJ gains a lot of strength, leading the silver patch. I mean, if we see that and it's real broad based, then it wouldn't bother me if the majors are lagging a little bit, because they led the beginning of the move, and that usually happens. And so I don't think they have to lead this move. We just need to see more broad based strength. And another thing I haven't said, if you look at prior to today, the last 3 days in this sector, if you look at the daily candles, even though the market was rising, not only were there 3 gaps, so you had 3 days in a row of gaps, but on each of those candles, if we're just looking at GDX, for example, and I think it's true at the other candles, the market did not close near the highs of any of those days. So, the market was up 3 days in a row, but it didn't, it was closing off the highs every day. So, that gaps kind of signal emotional trading, and then the market couldn't close near the highs. So it's kind of what I like to term weak strength. So that's something to keep in mind. And I don't think it's a big deal at this point who leads. We just need to see more broad-based strength. And yes, the junior golds have kind of been leading, at least as far as the last week. But we need, if we see GTXJ and GOEX breaking out, we want to see strong white candles. We want to see better performance against the metals, and we want to see those strong white candles across the sector, not just in one area. So it has to be broad-based.
So there's a lot of debate that I'm hearing within the gold community and within what some of the companies are telling me in terms of the type of investors that are in this sector. And I think it's impossible to tell for sure what type of investors are in here. Some of the gold bugs, I'm hearing them say, oh, generalists are starting to get involved, which you can make that argument because of the fact of how the majors ran, but I'm still hearing from a lot of companies that they're saying a lot of generalists are still not in this sector, and that could be another driving factor. We're definitely not seeing overwhelming generalists in the gold sector right now. What do you think about the type of investors that are investing and have their money in precious metal stocks?
Well, I think the generalists have come in the large caps. I mean, that's been clear over the last couple months. I mean, the seniors, I should say. I mean, the generalists have been buying Barrick, Newmont, Agnico, Wheaton Precious Metals, Franco-Nevada, those types of companies. But yes, they have not been buying juniors, which they usually don't do anyway. Yeah, I don't think it's a good question. I don't think it's that big of a problem. I think we're going to see we'll see more broad-based participation when we see the next leg higher. When we see GDXJ breaking its 2016 high. When we see GDX confirming this breakout and then making a higher high. And then at the same time, I don't know if that means gold goes above 1,800 or 1,900. But we've talked about those levels before. But I think those levels are key to get even more people in the sector, or at least get some of these generalists to go down the food chain a little bit. When they see this really great action, they see, oh, wow, well, this, GDXJ or these silver stocks, I mean, relative to the metal, relative to GDX, on a long-term basis, they're still really cheap. They're starting to move up. I think I might move into, some riskier areas because there's more upside there. So, yeah, I could see that happening, but I think those levels for GDXJ, and maybe even gold have to break first to usher in, greater momentum and then greater speculation. But yeah, some generalists have come in so far, but they've only gone into the seniors.
Absolutely. Let's wrap it up just with a quick comment on the U.S. dollar. You already mentioned that the dollar has been a big supporting factor of gold holding higher and even grinding higher. But the dollar sentiment's quite washed out right now. It's really hard, I think, to predict where the dollar is going to go because of all these different factors, some of which actually impact dollar moves, some of which the dollar is just ignored. What do you think are main drivers for the dollar, and what is your outlook for the dollar?
I mean, as far as drivers for the dollar, it's obviously real interest rates. And I mean, it's real interest rates of the dollar versus the real interest rates of other currencies. And I mean, trying to predict the dollar over the last couple of years has been really difficult. Every time it looks like it's gaining strength, is going to break out, it's at a nasty reversal. And then when it looks like it's going to break down, it goes the other way. So the dollar has just been a hot mess over the last couple of years. Now, as far as the immediate or near-term technicals, I mean, there's a lot of support on the weekly chart. I'm just bringing it up, just below 96, so kind of in that area. And you see the same thing on the daily chart. I mean, you see on the daily chart support at 95. So the dollar just closed at 97 as we're speaking. It's up today. So there's a little bit more room it could fall. But, if we're looking out several months, my bias would be probably to the upside just because it's closer to strong support. But I mean, that's just a guess because the dollar has been really hard to predict. I mean, in addition to the dollar, I would also look at inflation expectations. So there's various charts I look at, like TIP versus TLT, how are base metals doing, how are commodities doing? And a lot of those charts, they've rebounded. They're a little bit close to their 200-day moving averages. So that's another thing, in addition to the dollar, that I'm watching, inflation expectations. Obviously, if the dollar were to fall below 96 and not rally at that support, I mean, that would be a reflationary signal for everything. So, I mean, that would also be good for the sector, better for silver than gold. But, even if the dollar rebounds and strengthens, that's not necessarily the worst thing for precious metals. We've seen it. We've seen gold go up alongside a strengthening dollar. So, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on the dollar, but predictions on it are really hard, and, we'll see what happens.
Hey, fair enough. The dollar has been a tough one to call, and it's been a real push and pull factor. Yes, sometimes the dollar and gold moving up together on a fear trade. Other times, dollar selling off, even when we're seeing decent economic data, but then it's a move into more risk-on assets. But gold then can be supported by a lower dollar. Man, oh man, it's a confusing sector and confusing relationship right now. But it has been pretty interesting to see the dollar move fairly aggressively down over the last about month and a half. Jordan, thanks for your time today. I will post a link to your website below. I recommend everybody checking that out to stay up to date on the technicals for the precious metals. Thanks for your time today, Jordan.